What is John Harvey Kellogg, the health reformer of the late 19th and early 20th century, doing there?
Scott Ritzema, and boy, so Scott Ritzema give a little historical understanding, not only on the issue of abortion. For those of you who know, I've been beating that drum for the past 2.5 months for some reason, but the Lord laid this matter on my heart and I can't keep quiet. But the thing is, he is going to show you something that's going to blow your mind. And I never knew that. I've never read it in our books. I didn't even know it even existed. And he's going to show you the eugenics movement had made his way through the Adventist church. And one man in particular has sponsored that and supported that. And I was shocked by this. And again, this is to show you there are certain things we do need to understand. And you can also understand why even in some of our hospitals today, this is still being performed. And there should be an outcry from God's people. That's my perspective on that. Anyway, listen to what he does, because he's going to blow your mind.
The black Germans that they referred to as Rhineland bastards, round them up. And he was one of the architects of the barbaric medical experiments that the Nazis carried out. So you can see Satan was up to something, beginning with Darwin and moving on to Hitler. And this comes as a surprise to a lot of people that these American eugenics organizations were at the core of this. We'll get in a few minutes to why that's important for our day in which we live. But here's another American eugenicist named Madison Grant. He wrote this book called The Passing of the Great Race. And this book was referred to by none other than Adolf Hitler as my Bible. Adolf Hitler called American eugenicist Madison Grant's book, The Passing of the Great Race, as my Bible, he called it. So you can see the crossover between American eugenicists and the Nazi movement. Of course, there were American eugenicists that routinely praised Adolf Hitler in the media, and they were proud of it. This was not something that was like some secret inner room deals or something. This was, as I said, mainstream. They publicly praised them. Some of them even met with guys like Heinrich Himmler, the chief architect of the Holocaust, was meeting with American eugenicists in the lead up to the Holocaust. This is the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute, the center of German eugenics. So under Hitler's Nazi party, they had their own eugenics institute, the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute. Now, of course, do you think there were connections between the German one and the three American ones I mentioned? Oh yeah. This was just as Rockefeller funded as the American Eugenics Society was Rockefeller funded. It was Rockefeller money that was endowing the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute, the Nazi eugenics organization, those who gave us this great, horrible, wicked scourge of Nazi Holocaust and everything that went on there in Germany, funded by the American eugenicists, by the Rockefellers. You could say this is the German branch of the American Eugenics Society, funded by the Rockefeller Institute. Eugenics in America was not just for, if you will, kind of like the ne'er-do-wells and the people who are just ignorant bigots and fools. And this was not just for, people in KKK robes. This was for people in judicial robes. This was for the mainstream progressive elite of the time. Even people in clergy robes. You'd be shocked to the level to which mainline Protestant denominations and the biggest names in leadership in these denominations in the early 20th century, in the early 1900s, had bought into this ideology of eugenics, this wickedly racist, anti-biblical ideology. Even some of the supposedly cutting-edge health reformers who did an awful lot of good, and these ministers and stuff, I'm sure they did a lot of good too, but when you get a face and a name like this is going to hit a little close to home for some of the viewers of this video. I said health reformers, didn't I? Who's that man pictured center of the fellow eugenicists there? A group of physicians and other specialists who gave their services in examining and scoring participants in the Fitter Families contest. Fitter Families is like survival of the fittest of races? What is John Harvey Kellogg, the health reformer of the late 19th and early 20th century, doing there? Well, the Battle Creek Enquirer recently published an expose on this. This is USA Today, publicly available history. I want to point out a very important proviso before I tell you anything more about John Harvey Kellogg's brush with the eugenics movement. This quote right here: "It wasn't until his break from the church in 1907 that he began to truly embrace the ideas." So John Harvey Kellogg had previously been a Bible-believing, present truth advocating, obedient to the Spirit's leading health reformer. And we praise God for the movements of progress that happened in the health fields under his guidance. But you know what happened? If you know the story of John Harvey Kellogg, he began to kick against the goads, and I don't want to receive the guidance of the spirit of prophecy, and eventually broke from the church and then jumped headlong, believe it or not, into the eugenics movement. Now, to his credit, he actually was very, if you will, enlightened and very progressive in a good way in his dealings with various races in his personal life. He and his wife had Haskell Home. They had this orphanage where they brought in many children. And they had adopted these children of various races. He personally did a skin graft with Sojourner Truth. So in a way, like, blacks received good treatment from him personally, but as he got steeped in the eugenics movement, the black race received scorn, of course, and contempt, because eugenics holds that Africans are inferior and on up the food chain to his own race being the superior. How John Harvey Kellogg was wrong on race. Battle Creek Enquirer. Here's a photo of the pamphlet that was handed out at the National Conference on Race Betterment, hosted by the Battle Creek Sanitarium leadership, John Harvey Kellogg. The race betterment. Kellogg advocated for a eugenics registry to establish racial thoroughbreds and called for sterilization of those who were defective. People don't realize Battle Creek was an epicenter of the American eugenics movement, said Alexandra Minna-Stern, professor at the University of Michigan and author of Eugenic Nation, Faults and Frontiers of Better Breeding in Modern America. This was a state, speaking of Michigan, where there were a limited number of medical elites like Kellogg, and they held a lot of sway. So he hosted these conferences on race betterment, which Battle Creek became an epicenter of the eugenics movement. This is shameful, right? And this doesn't reflect poorly upon the godly leadership of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, who put John Harvey Kellogg on the map to begin with. He departed from that truth and dove into this satanic ideology when he ditched the church and said, enough with the Spirit's authority in my life. I'm going to be the authority in my life. And so I guess you could say this is a logical, natural consequence and result of saying no to God. When we say no to authority, when we say no to, for example, the 6-day creation in the Bible, if we say no to that and we go, well, maybe Darwinism. Okay, well then that means natural selection, which means survival of the fittest, and nature selects the weak to die off. Well, we can kind of improve upon that. It leads naturally and logically into these ideologies. Kellogg thought he knew better than God, ended up leaving the truth, and ended up being one of the most prominent eugenicists. I had never heard that till I studied into it. John Harvey Kellogg, an actual eugenicist.
Wow. Yeah, I want to get some thoughts on that. How do you guys feel about this?
Pastor Benjamin, you can go first.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's incredible because myself, before pastoring, I spent 6 years studying health and medicine. And so we talked about eugenics, especially with the Canadian focus because I'm Canadian. And so getting into this and just imagining like how John Harvey Kellogg engaged in eugenics and getting full deep into it once he departed from the faith. Very interesting.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. When he departed from the faith, he went lower than the First Nations people.
Wow.
And what do I mean by that? I'm not hating on First Nations people, but what I'm telling you is that First Nations people, how they treated those with disabilities, those who were of the lesser, they treated them with dignity and respect. The First Nations people did. But when the European settlers came prior to Confederation in Canada, so like 1867, prior to that, British settlers and French settlers, they had this approach which was extremely cruel and harsh.
Mm.
And so and the First Nations were like, huh? Like we treat our disabled people and those with problems with such respect and care, but then these newcomers come in with their technological advancement and they treat others like this, right? And so you see how when John Harvey Kellogg departed from the faith, the world, society crept into his heart.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
So
Yeah.
So
sad.
you had all this outcropping. People were prior to Confederation, 1867. People were categorized as deserving or undeserving.
Mm.
Today, sometimes we have this aspect in churchism too, where some people are more deserving based on their background, they're deserving of role, deserving of status, but less deserving in other aspects based on your background or how you've been brought up, right? It's very fascinating how the world creeps into people's hearts so subtly that they don't recognize them.
Yeah.
This-
Yeah, I agree.
I take,
agree.
I take warning. I take warning.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my reaction. So this is not my first time hearing about John Harvey Kellogg. Being a eugenicist, and when I went through medical missionary training, that's where I caught wind of that, and I was shocked. I'm like, wait a minute, what? And then to obviously made sense when he departed, from the faith, from the church. He took that ideology on, and from what I understand, his the reason for it is because obviously he was the health reformer of the 19th century, but he took it too far to where he felt like he could perfect the human body, essentially, and so you could get so healthy that you just have perfect health, and that led into the idea of, oh, if we can do that, then this is something that we need to spread across humanity, and humanity can come to this higher plane of existence. And then he tried to put some spirituality in that, and obviously his beliefs on pantheism, but that was the idea, and so that led him into, oh well, these folks over here are, they're not as intelligent, or they have defects, and so
Yeah.
in order for humanity to come to this perfect place, we got to get rid of them. And so yeah, it's very, very unfortunate, but I encourage everyone, if you haven't watched that whole video from Brother Scott Ritzema, please do, because it goes even deeper. I mean, eugenics, it influenced politics, government policies. I mean, it was widespread during that time, and to this day, we are still feeling its effects. So
Wow.
yeah,
That's right. And it's this whole eugenics movement, it's antichrist. If you
yeah,
think about the Christian perspective, okay, Christian perspective, perfection came down to the least perfect, to uplift the least perfect, and to encourage and embolden and empower.
amen. Yes,
It's eugenics spins that right on its head. Yeah.
Wow. Huge. Wow. I mean, I'm still. That's why I had to save that. I'm not gonna react to this. I'm gonna wait till we come on alive to get other people's perspective on this. I didn't know this, but it does make sense once you depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing the spirits and doctrines of devils. So it's just pretty sad. And the warning for us is just that's the trajectory of what could possibly happen when we depart from counsels, from truth. The kind of stuff you find yourself doing is horrendous. I did hear that John Harvey Kellogg in the end did repent.
I heard that too.
Yeah, I've heard that, which is good.
Yeah,
But I think the loss of many souls who's been deceived through his ministry as a result of his departure,
definitely.
I don't think we could ever account for that, which was terrible. So, yeah, but the thing is, John Harvey Kellogg's is just one name. I got other names that I would say even more recently in the 1900s. Some of these men not only have performed abortion in some of our institutions, they have received awards, and their names are still up there. Yeah, and it's still acknowledged as some. Some are talking about like over 6,000. Some of them were being performed even during the Sabbath hour. and they brag about this on documents.
Wow.
And I plan on actually doing a video about it. I'm still waiting. I'm gathering some information. I'm in touch with pro-life Andrew. He has all these facts and stuff. And once you see it, it's almost like it's, to me, I'm like, why is the Seventh Adventist Church still having a conversation about whether or not like abortion is a thing? Like, for example, even the world is waking up. I don't know why God's people is so behind. The world right now is like 50%, or it's like 70% of the world is already pro-life. One of the reasons why Kamala Harris lost the election was because she was pro-choice. She wanted to get rid of the babies. Most people, and especially young people who voted against her because she was pro-choice and she was radical with it. That's why she lost. Like, that's one of the main reasons why people voted against her. Most Christians who voted against Kamala Harris and for Trump was because she was determined to kill the babies. So when you come to the church and you hear some of our men, until today, there's another video that I got coming from another brother, and I hate to say their name, but like, and it's a respectable brother and a PhD and everything. You hear him arguing for that. Like, he's just arguing. I'm like, yo, you arguing for the killing of babies. Like, I don't care how well you put your words together. This stuff is not going to look well in a judgment. No matter how strong a conviction is, you're not going to bypass God. I'm here for the women, reproductive freedom. I'm like, those code words means one thing. You are part of a death cult. It doesn't matter what you say. And also, anyway, I got a video coming up about some of these individuals as well. But I felt the need to address this today, just to literally say, if there's one cause that we need to be on the right side of in our history, this is the one. And I look at it from the perspective, like, if you lived during a time of slavery, would you have remained silent? If you lived during a time when the Jews and the Holocaust was happening, would you have been the Carrie Ten Boom of society? Would you have taken care of them? If you lived during a time of the Yellow Jacket, you lived during a time when, you know, the Chinese were just being butchered and being starved to death through famines and so on, would you have pushed back against the government? It's always amazing to me when you do the historical research. Like, oftentimes when these atrocities are happening, most people take a neutral position, and in their neutrality, that's how it happens. The people who opposed it and spoke against it have always been looked at as, you're just troubling people, you know, this is none of our business, I don't want to get political. Oftentimes those arguments are come up to shut down the conversation, but what they're really doing is, this is how the atrocity continues. I was doing a study on ostrich and about the Holocaust. Majority of the Germans didn't even know, right in their backyard, they were killing the Jews. Like, they were living their regular lives. They knew that the Jews went to get a job and they were, you know, put in carts and everything like that, even though they never came back home. But it never dawned on them, like, there's possibility that these people are losing. Like, where all these people are going, they don't even think about it. So it's like, here we are in a culture where the death rate is going down. The black community is responsible. 3% of women is responsible for 40% of abortion. And you look at the rest of the culture and the race is dying. And the average person is like, well, nothing's wrong. It's like, it doesn't click though. It takes time. And that's why videos like this, like, have to be made, and the church has to be a voice, because it has to click. Because for the average church goer, it's not a thought. I only hear pro-life Andrew, who's his name from 3ABN, Danny Shelton, and Scott Ritzema. These are the only 3 Seventh Adventist pastors that I've actually heard even preach a sermon about this. The average, you can hear a lot of people who say, I am present truth. They never touch this one. It's like, present truth, yeah, present truth, yes, but isn't this present truth? You know, you will hear they talk about all kind of stuff. They talk about the Pope. Even if he sneezes, there's a video about that. But if that is happening, it's almost like you have nothing to say about it. And it blows my mind. It blows my mind all the time. So I'm just saying, like, if we're not careful as a church, we might find ourselves to be on the wrong side of history. We're going to look back and say, how in the world did we let this happen in the future? And I think it's going to be too late. You know, and I think during the time in which we live, we can't get this thing wrong. This is way too obvious for us to get this wrong, you know. And I think that's why I've been speaking against it.